Good morning, everyone. It is Monday, April the 20th, and here are the headlines for today. Currently, this morning, we have temperatures in the 30s in the Midwest and the Northeast, and we'll see those temperatures remain cool into Tuesday morning. Meanwhile, rainfall will move into Texas and California early this week. So if you live in Houston northward to Dallas, expect rainfall Monday and Tuesday. And the same goes for San Francisco, California, up to Portland, Maine. You guys can expect rainfall early this week. But over time, we'll see temperatures begin to warm up east of the Mississippi River as we see ridging building throughout the week. And we'll see those temperatures rise back into the 70s and 80s across the mid Atlantic, and eventually the 60s and 70s back into the Northeast. And finally, we'll have severe weather coming back into the picture, especially by Thursday, and that looks to continue into the weekend. And we're talking about many of the same locations from the Great Plains into the Midwest, and then eventually the Southeast as we get into Friday. That's it for today's headlines. Let's get into the details. So, if you're waking up this morning in the Midwest and the Northeast, it's really chilly outside. We're seeing temperatures in the 30s from Minnesota through, let's say, Michigan and Pennsylvania, New York State. In fact, when we step this forward, we can see where the high pressure system over the Great Lakes is moving into the Northeast Tuesday morning. We have 30s in the central Appalachians as well. We'll see those temperatures drop down into the low to mid 30s in places like Charlottesville, maybe southward in Roanoke. Now, these temperatures are going to quickly warm back up. If you look at the state of Iowa, for example, I'm going to circle that for you. See how temperatures Monday morning are in the 30s and 40s. As we get into Tuesday morning, we can see how the temperatures have really warmed up back into the 50s. Again, we're talking about mid to upper 50s Tuesday morning for the state of Iowa. So we're talking about temperatures rising by at least 20 degrees between Monday and Tuesday over parts of the Great Plains and into the Midwest. Now, eventually, we'll have a ridge move back into the Midwest, the Mid Atlantic, and the Northeast, returning normal temperatures for this time of year 60s and 70s, and eventually some 80s into the Mid Atlantic by Thursday this week. And we'll likely see temperatures back in the 60s and 70s over the Northeast eventually, too, as we get towards that Thursday, Friday timeframe. Also, pay attention to the West Coast. Again, we have ridging in the east. We're going to start to see a trough move back into the West Coast. And that means for you guys, we'll have rain and mountain snow in the state of California, and also some mountain snow in the Intermountain West. Places like Montana, Wyoming, and eventually Colorado will get some snow. Even in places such as the Dakotas, we could see a major winter storm as we get towards midweek. In fact, when we look at Thursday, we can see this low pressure system over North Dakota. It's showing here 983 millibars, which is a fairly strong low pressure system. And just for context, our low pressure system last week that was involved in all the severe weather was closer to about 990 millibars. So if this does pan out, this would be a rather strong low pressure system for early spring. And we can see here in front of it, right to the south and east of it, a line of thunderstorms that could form Thursday afternoon. Now, this line that you're seeing extending down from Minnesota into Iowa, Missouri, and even Kansas here could produce some severe thunderstorms and even some isolated tornadoes as we get towards Thursday. Now, if you look on the backside of this low pressure system, we do have moderate to heavy snowfall that could set up. And right now, we could see as much as 6 inches of snowfall, maybe more, in places like Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, portions of Wyoming. In fact, this is going to be a system we have to watch as we get towards the middle of next week, not only for heavy snowfall, but also high winds. Now, one of the things we look for here is the surface level moisture. We can see in the yellow here dew points in the 60s. And we're talking about southern portions of Minnesota, uh, from Iowa down to Texas here. It's a large area of dew points in the 60s. Again, this moisture being drawn up from the Gulf of Mexico. And on the back side of it, we have dew points in the 20s and 30s. In fact, this dry line that's setting up here could be the trigger for some of these storms that are developing towards the middle and latter part of next week. And we could see consecutive days once again of severe weather develop because of this dry line. Now, during the day Thursday, we can see that temperatures are in the 70s and even the 80s across the Great Plains into the Midwest and the Mid Atlantic. And we can see how temperatures are struggling to get back into the 50s and 60s over the Northeast. But again, if you live in the Hudson Valley in particular, again, across the Capital District of Albany, we'll likely get back into the 60s by the time we get to Thursday of next week. But I also want to point out to you guys the temperatures ahead of that cold front that's coming out of the Intermountain West. And you can see how ahead of the cold front, we have those temperatures rising into the 70s, providing further instability to these developing storms. Now, another key factor for determining where severe weather will develop is looking at the change of winds with height. Now, this is showing at about 1 to 2 kilometers above the surface, and we have wind speeds over 40 miles per hour here in parts of Iowa, into Kansas, down into Oklahoma, and even parts of Missouri. And that's lining up well with what we were seeing in terms of surface level moisture, right? Those dew points in the mid 60s over the same region. So we got the surface level moisture, we have the daytime heating, and we'll have these changing winds with height. And all these ingredients will go into developing supercell thunderstorms during the day Thursday. Now, for the reasons that we previously mentioned, the Storm Prediction Center is showing about a 15% probability of severe weather developing in Oklahoma, eastern Kansas, western Missouri, and even southern Iowa. Now, just keep in mind that this is going to be dependent on where we see the greatest change in winds at the surface, as well as where that dry line sets up. So, if we look at the 500 millibar heights for Thursday, I'm going to highlight the region again that could be experiencing severe weather. And this is approximately what we were seeing before. And I want you to keep in mind that we have this strong low pressure system that will add further instability to that region. I want you to notice what happens to it as we move forward to Friday. You'll notice how this low pressure system shoots to the north, right? So any further convergence of winds that was established by that low pressure system over the Great Plains is going to shift to the north. And that's going to remove some of the instability likely over that region that we saw on Thursday. What's going to develop Friday is a new low pressure system, let's say between New Mexico and Colorado. And southeast of that, we'll likely have another corridor of severe weather. And that could possibly be over parts of Texas, Oklahoma, and into Arkansas. So when we're looking for instability downstream of that low pressure system, we want to look for higher dew points at the surface, right? And we also want to look at, let's say, that surface wind speed increasing with height, right? Again, around that 1 to 2 kilometer level in the troposphere. Now, looking at the winds early Friday morning, I want to point out this area again over Texas, Oklahoma, perhaps into Arkansas of wind speeds over 40 miles per hour. Again, if you're at the surface with wind speeds of 5 to 10 and it rises to that level, that will likely create enough spin in the atmosphere for some of the storms to be severe. And again, this is for Friday morning, possibly into Friday afternoon over this region here. When we look at the Storm Prediction Center, again, largely it is the same region that we were just talking about over parts of Texas, Arkansas, maybe into northern portions of Louisiana and southern portions of Missouri here. And once again, it could expand, right? It depends on where those winds do set up. One thing I'm noticing in the model runs is that these winds are dissipating into the afternoon, so we might lose some of that instability as we go through the day Friday. But again, check in on Wednesday, I would say, especially if you live in Texas, eastern Texas, right? Arkansas, southern portions of Missouri and Louisiana. This is subject to change, of course, right? Being more than 4 days out. Well, guys, we'll leave it at that today. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Please leave a like or subscribe to the channel. It helps this content get out to more viewers. And if you have any questions about today's video, just leave those in the comments down below. Otherwise, I hope to see you guys Thursday for the next video. Bye for now.